Welcome to Editing Improv, Choose Your Own Adventure, moderated by ACE's very own Susan Vale, ACE. Please welcome our panelists, Christine Armstrong, ACE, Varun Viswanath, ACE, Diana Fishman, ACE, Stacy Moon, and Jennifer Vecchiarello.
Hello. Is everybody having a great time? Woo. Has everybody lost weight? Just a little bit, in the sweatbox. Anyway, thank you guys all. I want to give a special thanks to Varun Viswanath for filling in for Vera Drew, who could not be with us because of illness. We wish you well. Please get better soon, Vera. And if you have not seen Vera's really remarkable, brave, edgy, iconic, transgressive, anarchist movie called The People's Joker, $4.99 on Amazon. It's wild. It's so creative. Also, she's cut a web series called I Love Dave that was a little more like sweet and weird and heartwarming and kind of Pee-wee's Playhouse. So just really creative, interesting work to check out when you have some time. All right, so here we are. I'm very excited to have all these people join me. So just really quickly, I think you did just hear some of their credits, but I just wanted to run down it again. Christine here is she's cut Imprisoned, Rutherford Falls, Woke, Upload, How to Die Alone, which is the new Natasha Rothwell show that looks amazing, and a feature that is the directing debut of Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, coming out soon. And then Varun, hang on, I wanted to read Varun's bio because he didn't get to include it in the program. So here we go. It's very good. Varun is an Emmy and Eddie-nominated film and TV editor who loves working on comedies with strong emotional spines. His recent credits include Deli Boys, coming soon on Hulu, Reservation Dogs, based on a true story, and What We Do in the Shadows. Varun was born and raised in Bangalore, India, spent his formative years juggling corporate and filmmaking careers in Singapore before moving to Los Angeles in 2010 for film school. Varun is both alumni of and teacher at the American Film Institute Conservatory. He is a member of the ACE Education Committee and an associate member of the ACE Diversity Program. And when he's not working, Varun and his toddler son, Ishi, continue their long quest to find the best breakfast burrito in Los Angeles. Where is it? No, where is it?
It's a never-ending quest.
Is it that one on Atwater? In Atwater, it's really good.
Via Corona.
Well, my favorite right now is my favorite always has been Cafe Los Feliz. It's on Hillhurst. Okay. It's the first breakfast burrito I fell in love with.
Okay.
That's
Don't
a hard
want to
one
make
to
you all
beat.
hungry.
That's a hard one to beat. Also recommended by an editor, Anisha. Is Anisha here?
All right, fantastic. Thank you. Next, we have Diana Fishman, who is well known for Jury Duty, which was kind of amazing and a phenomenon that we all really enjoyed. Grace and Frankie with some comedy legends that are just should be shrined to gold. Southside, which is a hilarious comedy that more people should check out. It's so worth your time. It's like a Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but like edgier. And then, I discovered this credit on her resume that I am so curious about called Great Minds with Dan Harmon. And it was like a 2016 show where he had like Jack Black, Sarah Silverman, Aubrey Plaza, all these amazing improv actors come and play historical figures. And so I'm like, that sounded like a good time. And then you're currently cutting Running Point with Mindy Kaling, right? And then Stacy Moon down here. Stacy's resume blew me away. I was like, look what she said. She's worked a lot with Nathan Fielder and Tim Robinson, who are doing really kind of cutting edge work in comedy and television right now. So The Curse, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, The Rehearsal, The Chair, that was with the great Sandra Oh, a Black Lady sketch show. She was on season 1 of that. And Portlandia was her big start and, just kind of still a high watermark in improv comedy. And then we have the beautiful Jennifer Vecchiarello. And Jennifer, some of you may remember, won the Ace Eddie earlier this year, for the really amazing film Reality, which is not a speck of improv in that. It's actually based on FBI transcripts, but it's so powerful and it's so chilling and it's just an incredible, it is just like dripping in subtext, cloaked in just chat, between FBI officers and Reality Winner when she was arrested. It's fascinating. Jennifer has also cut, this new film coming out with Aubrey Plaza called My Old Ass. That looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Come On, the beautiful film with Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Mike Mills. Gorgeous. That's a work of art. Cajillionaire by Miranda July, and then she's lent her expertise to some love to Thor: Love and Thunder and the Hunger Games Mockingjay movies as well. So all stars. Here we go. All right. We're going to start just with a couple of clips just to get us going. And I wanted to just share one quote that I came across. It was actually in looking up some of your work with Mike Mills and talking about those movies. And it's, your duties oscillate. I don't think you said this, but I just loved this because I felt like I think the writer of the article wrote this, that your duties oscillate as a job grinds on between those of a gem carver and those of a bricklayer. It's one thing to perfect a single joke, quite another to assemble a series of these into a movie that stands up straight. So I thought that was very apt for those of us that have gotten into the labyrinth sometimes that improv footage can be. And it's almost like cutting in a multiverse, because instead of just multiple takes, it's multiple strands, it's multiple directions, and that's why I called this panel Choose Your Own Adventure. When you see these clips, what you see is going to be just the tip of the iceberg. There's mountains and mountains of footage underneath. And so what we're going to tell you about today is the process of getting to that tip and making sure it doesn't tip over. So can we roll the first 3 clips? That would be Hacks, Christine's clip from Upload and Unprisoned, and then Varun's clip from Reservation Dogs.
Sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
Watch the drink. Sorry. Jesus.
Okay, job gerbil. You are going to pretend to be me so that I can take a break from pretending to be dead.
Cove, Aeon, Lakeview.
Lakeview, obviously. Okay, here's everything you need.
Fuck that shapeshifter.
Okay, I'll teach you all a few things, but you gotta take me to town to sell my weed.
All right. Those are amazing. I thank you guys. One thing we really wanted to show is like the varieties of improv that can happen. So that's one reason why I included the hacks, because it's just sort of almost a solo person improvising physical comedy, basically. And I just had wanted to share, this is the actual script page from that scene, and it's like the lines of dialogue to the lady playing the slot machine, 2 lines to the waitress, and the waitress saying, "Oh, drinks are on the house." And then it says jump cut to Ava, the laptop's closed and she takes a hit from her vape and puts money in the machine. And that's all it says. And and I got those. That was like a pickup scene that I got, and it was like a Friday night, and I was gonna have to work with the producers the next day. And I figured, it's like an 1/8 of a page. I'll just do it after dinner real quick. And it was COVID, and I'm in my house, like looking at my bed, and suddenly realized I have 3 hours of dailies of improv that I have to make magical. And for me, like the secret trick is just okay. Let's do the select reel and find the song. And and then the song just makes it so fun. And then finding those little threads that you can kind of weave in and out. And I think originally it was much longer, and we just kept like cutting it down. And there were things that the directors remembered that I hadn't even like spotted, where she like tossed her head back, kind of flirting with the waitress, and I was like, oh yeah, that's great. So those are, I wanted to just talk about, those are some of the choices why, I loved those pieces of her turns of character that were revealed there, and just the sloppiness of, the glasses falling. But the most important thing was serving the plot, which was that she's procrastinating doing her work. So improv can also like blend in with sound design and with other departments. moments. And so, for instance, I just made sure, like when, a very clean shot of her closing that laptop, making the choice not to work. And then our sound designer did the most amazing sound design for that Kitty Glitzer made up slot machine, and it's all these sounds of cats meowing and going ring, ring, and it's like he really created a story for the slot machine sound effects, which I adored. All right, tell us a little bit about the clips that you brought in for us, and which parts were improv, and why those were the ones that made it to the final cut.
So for Upload, the scene kind of ended when she was just like, "Oh, did you wash it, the suit?" And then the whole bit about like it's a toilets, excuse my French, was like all improv, and it was really fun because like I kind of went back and forth with that, and actually like had my AE like, I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if the toilet talked right now? And it's just like kind of fun. Like that's why I love improv, because I can just like make up a story and like add to the script, and so like they ended up keeping it for my editor's cut, and I was like, yes.
And what was the scene like? Just the structure of the scene originally?
So it was that back and forth between Ingrid and the job gerbil, and then it just ended, and she just left. So they kind of were going with each other like back and forth at the end of the script.
So you had a lot of options.
Yeah, I had a lot of options, and like kind of like blended kind of takes together. And then with Unprisoned, there was the same thing. They were actually both Carrie and they both went off script a little bit there, and they both were just like babbling about like, oh, because they used to date, and now he's coming for Christmas, and so it's a little bit awkward because he has a girlfriend now, and so they're both like have feelings for each other, and they were both like, oh no, I wasn't talking about you, and so I was just laughing so hard because they both had some really fun lines. So I kind of just made a script and like cut back and forth between them, and build that awkwardness, which was fun.
I loved how you stayed on her, so when she turned around, we could see her face fall, and like just that private moment, and it just kind of puts a button on all that awkwardness, which was really great. And Varun, in your scene.
Yeah, this was one of the first scenes that I cut in my first solo editing credit. With a director who's also an editor, so it was like really nerve-wracking to present this, and the scene was probably like 3 times as long. There was a lot more improv that they did. I think the biggest challenge when they were shooting that scene was that nobody had the blocking quite right. They didn't figure it out how they should do it every time. So they were workshopping the blocking as the takes went by, and as we got to the close-ups, like it was just not enough matching at all. And it's one of those scenes where so many directors have said this to us. They say, "I think I got the scene. You figure it out," and it was that. So each of their runs was different. Where they were, where they were geographically was different in practically every take, and so it was trying to thread the. How do you connect these different runs together? And not all of them are particularly experienced actors. I mean, Gary Farmer, of course, can, he's clearly the most experienced actor, but he also, his age was showing on set, and he kind of lost steam halfway through the day. So it was just kind of, how do you get something out of a performance that wasn't 100% what the performer would have wanted, what the director would have wanted, and then with all this messy thing. And then we went through multiple rounds of notes where you can see like the deer head we show very rarely, although I wanted to show it like 4 times, and the network kept pulling back. And so each time I had to cut a deer head, it almost always meant that I had to cut a joke, because like that's how we got around the limited coverage, was like, let's go to a deer head, make a joke about the deer head, they do another riff about the deer head so I can cut there and then reset to a different thing. And they just did not like how bad that deer head looked. We're like, it's funny. And then, it was a fake deer, obviously. And so yeah, it kept getting called. So that what's up there it's not particularly different from the script, but it's just how we got there was through this wading through all of this improv that they did, because they were having so much fun in one of the first ever kind of intergenerational comedy scenes that became such a signature off the show. So it was like, how do you make this first thing work for a director who's also an editor and make him laugh? And how do you, so that was one of the reasons why I picked this clip. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I think you touch on one of the nightmares of improv is the continuity hell that it usually creates. I mean, it just nothing matches, and so you have to be. That is one reason why. Again, it's like you have to make a very specific choice eventually. And I'm sure you had queued up like several alts of that where the continuity matches if they do this, or the continuity matches if they do that, and you have to save all of those.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like especially with cutting this kind of mismatched footage, improv stuff where you might not be taking things in order, might take a thing from a later in the blocking and put it earlier in the actual scene because that arc makes it funnier. I'm always trying to get away with something. I always feel like, okay, these are like 7 cuts I'm trying to get away with. Let's see who catches on, and then you almost till the last cut, like network cut 3 or something, somebody is like, oh, that thing doesn't match. It's like, damn it, I couldn't get, I just needed to get away with it one more time, and that's it, and then it would have been fine. And I feel like the audiences, other than the people who go and fill up IMDb, like trivia, like, this continuity doesn't match, like, I don't think the average audience really cares. So if I can get away with it for like 10 watches, I'm sure I can get through one watch on TV, right?
Don't ever say it out loud in the cutting room. You didn't notice that? And it's like, it'll haunt them.
I always come back with like, shit, I thought I could get away with it. And that's,
This is great. I think what I want to keep seeing the rest of our clips and have you guys introduce them, and then we'll do like more of a group chat on those, because this is terrific to hear like your thoughts on them. So can we go to jury duty and roll our last 3 clips?
Would you mind stating your name for the jury?
Randall Cody Schiller.
And who is your current employer?
Cinnamon and Sparrow.
It's his middle name. How long have you worked for Miss Hillgrove?
Since 2018.
You see what I mean? We're barely getting any tips. Yeah, we have wonderful employees. People seem to love our coffee.
I agree. It's all about the tip jar.
Tip jar?
Yeah. You're not familiar with the tip jar world.
I thought I'd be happier at 40.
You are happy, and I'm not 40, asshole.
You don't look happy. I feel like you're having a midlife crisis.
Well, I feel like you're high on mushrooms, so you don't know shit.
Opening next week, yeah? Woo! And it was a big Sundance hit, yeah? I think, congrats. Let's really quickly, if we just, can you guys each talk a little bit about those projects and why you chose the clip? Where was the improv? And I think it was all over jury duty, but.
Sure. I chose that clip because it still makes me laugh every time I see it. And the way that we kind of went about telling the stories in jury duty is we had tons and tons of footage to watch, and they were filming a lot of cameras and a lot of days. And we had these various character stories to tell, and we would I would just kind of find every time they mentioned Cody, or any time, like whatever the story was that we were collecting, I would approach it kind of more like a documentary. And so the clips in the lunchroom, I also chose the story because it's not dependent on Ronald. Like, the joke isn't that he's laughing at it, it's all these comedians, brilliant improvisers who are just on a roll with one another and saying these really funny things. And something that I like about it is that the audio really works. Like, you don't need to, there's a lot of continuity errors in it, but it doesn't really matter because you're listening to them, and the rhythm of it works, and it's really funny. And so I think I tend to be kind of a stickler for continuity, and that clip makes me laugh and challenges me because I'm like, look, it works, even though, we're bouncing around the room and people are taking off layers and whatever, like they're looking different, but it still really is funny. So
do you have any sense of the ratio of footage that you had, like, to a scene like that? Because I think that's so many cameras.
Well, yeah, it was a lot of cameras, and then they were shooting for like 3 weeks, and most of the time, like the case, they were pretending it was a real court case, so they would be in court all day, and then they would shoot at the the hotel. And so we also had these like diary camps to draw from. It was a lot of footage. I don't think it was more than like your average documentary or reality show. Those also have a ton of footage.
Just so unique in that it's like an entire cast of improv and then one person who doesn't know it's improv. And that's definitely, I think, one of a kind element to it. And then Stacy, can you tell us about your early days on the frontiers of Portlandia?
Definitely. So I picked this clip for several reasons. First being, I really looked back at everything I edited, and this was like probably the most heavily improv, but it's also like a very classic category of sketches that, you know, they would do on Portlandia, where they'd have a premise basically, and then Fred and Carrie would just show up, and art department would just throw them all these like inventive little things that they created, and then they'd just go to town for like an hour or something, just like working off each other. So then you as an editor come in, you watch all the stuff, you like pick the stuff you like, and you're sort of like rewriting this thing down to, 2 minutes or whatever.
The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think in this one, it was like they may have improv'd a little too much in the setup of the sketch. So, and it's one of the earliest sketches I ever edited. So it was like I had so much help from my mentors on that show, Ali Greer and Jordan Kim. And Ali really was like, okay, we gotta like figure out this setup because it was just not like, so unclear in the way it was coming together initially with just the footage, so she basically rewrote it and was like, here, do this. And so we like, it was a group project to sort of like put it together with these like animations and stuff. So
those were adorable. That was
it's just like a good reminder of like how much I learned on that show, of like all the different tools in your toolkit as like a sketch comedy editor specifically. You can paint things out, you can split screen things, you can make graphics. The whole thing was like, Portlandia was just such a like sandbox where you just played as an editor, and I loved that, and I learned so much. And so like that's like classic Fred, just going to town, playing a character, and you just pull these little bits and jokes together.
One thing I really liked about the interstitial element of that with the graphics and everything is that often improv can sometimes be kind of sweaty and over the top and feel, feel intentionally inauthentic, kind of like that's part of the wink of the joke in Portlandia, I think, versus other shows where moments where the improv actually helps to kind of reach a real and a truer moment, like the awkwardness with Kerry Washington, and so I really appreciated that sort of bridge, because it helped elevate it in a way that like it pushed the joke into like hyper real and like sort of international levels of humor, which was great. And I have a quick technical question. Did you guys paint out the wires that he was hanging from when you first see him and then leave them in
we thought it was
for the squeaky sound?
It's just like on these wires, it's just like, where did they come from? There's no reason. Like, who cares? He's a bit of a dummy,
I thought it was a reference to The Big Lebowski. If anyone remembers Julianne Moore's Artist, she would like paint swinging on those wires and everything. I was like, I went right for that. Totally. That's awesome. Jen, it was you that had mentioned when we were talking before about that sometimes that's why we enjoy like mining the improv, is that it is this moment of like truthfulness that sometimes is more honest than when they're saying the words that were on the page. So can you tell us about the movie that's coming out and about like your approach to improv on some of your other projects?
Yeah, I'm on the stage with some improv like masters, especially in the field of comedy, that I've just been laughing here. I feel like a lot of my experience with improv has been more in the dramatic realm, where I lean on it for the naturalism of it, because I feel a lot of times you just kind of let these actors go. They have the idea of the script, they go off the script, or they just start adding to it. And those are the moments when I'm watching dailies that I like often really respond to. And maybe it's just my brain noticing the difference, because I get tired of hearing the script lines more and more, but there's usually so much like meat in there, just so much raw emotion, that I often kind of lean in on that stuff. And, I've gotten to work on footage with some incredible actors who are always giving something. And then my old ass, I shared the trailer. I did not cut the trailer. I wish I met the editor or team of editors who had. Their work is amazing on it. But also a lot of that naturalism for that comedy in there. Most of the scenes with Maisie Stella and her, her two best friends, they are just doing whatever comes out of their mouth. And it is so funny because two of them are best friends in real life. One third kind of came into the picture later, but immediately their banter was so funny and honest and natural and made me laugh all the time. And I think, they're also kind of a younger generation, so letting them use their slang and tell their jokes their way was much better than me trying to keep up with the, I'm old compared to them. I'm the old ass. And so I think just leaning into their impulses and embracing that and just letting them shine was definitely the best approach to take.
Yeah, that kind of brings me back to how you approach the footage from the get-go. So when the dailies are coming in, how do you talk to your assistant ahead of time about what's the best way to organize it that will work for you? Because there's always different ways of string outs versus super scripting and all that stuff. Anyone have a?
Well, script sync is the best thing that's ever happened to us, right, guys? Especially in improv, because I'm able to compare the script to the footage in that way, and I usually have my assistant highlight when there's a part in the scene that's gonna they go off book, and sometimes it's a different line read or they didn't get the line right, but I almost like to hear other options, and that's how I like to do it. I off of the script sync and comparing that with the script and seeing what went off and sometimes what stayed the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I depend on script sync a lot, and I
do you color code alts differently or anything?
I don't color code actually I don't color code much at all in the app, other than the audio, the different sound effects get their own color and music get their own color, but the rest of it, any of the interface, I don't really color that much. But I also was an assistant editor for a long time on mockumentary comedies, improv comedy. So I feel I had a lot of time kind of figuring out how I would want the script to look, because that's what I would keep changing it for my editors to be hey, is this a little easier? It's a little easier on the assistant. Does it still work for you? So where I've landed is if I especially for improv, I ask my assistant editors to script by topic and not really do the entire transcript. And so if it says something about a stinky deer and it does it 3 times, I would just say just put stinky deer in there and then give me all the clips of all the hits of stinky deer across all takes.
So a string out, a mini string out?
No, it's in the script. I would add improv's about the chariot, and maybe they did it 6 times in different takes and different actors spoke about it. And I try to get it organized by, if I'm going to cut a joke about I'm going to use this run about chariots, then I want to find all that footage quickly so that I can, and if it comes back later, especially in a producer's cut or director's cut in TV, you usually don't have as much push and pull in the schedule, so you've got to be able to find them super quick. And then say, okay, this is all the runs about chariots, so these are all the runs about 4 sacred days, which we used in the finale. So I look at it more from an organizational, how can I find it quickly? But then after that, I try to cut every joke possible from the improv, and even if there's combinations of you do a setup from take 1, but the finish on take 5 was a little different, or they were unrelated jokes, but I found it funny if you made it that disjoint, and that gave a different type of laugh that might have said something about the character, about how they were lost in their own world or whatever it is, and I cut every joke that I can out of the footage, and then present.
Do you just keep it in a bin? Is that when you do a string out? Do you ever send that string out to directors or anything?
I haven't. I usually have the other editors look at them on the show, and in TV, we're usually lucky we have other editors on the show that we can be hey, here's a bunch of runs. What do you think is funny? What did you laugh? Or I have my assistant editors watch these 7 different jokes, and which one did you like? And then I'd usually put 2 or 3 in the cut and keep the rest to show the director if they didn't like any of it. And we say, okay, here's another 7 things that we could do out of this scene. Yeah.
When you put it, and anyone else, if this is the way you work too, please jump in. But like when you put it in the cut like that, Varun, do you, just have the scene play out, and then if it's like a little button or an alt, you'll just like pop to it real quick and then let the scene continue, or do you replay the kind of portion of the scene?
Right. I usually see how many shots you're gonna have to go back to get the timing, get a sense of the timing right, and then put an alt 1 or alt 2 title, text on black, and then go back a few shots and then do the alternate kind of how it weaves in a different way to the next moment. And sometimes I have 7 because they've clearly like the director has given very specific direction to the actor, and it's like, okay, say it this way, and okay, let's do another one maybe a little angrier, a little quieter, or throw it away this way, or say it to that person, whatever it is. And I put everything in there in quick succession so they can see in the context of the scene how it plays, as opposed to like what does that take just by itself. And I feel like that I get a lot of very quickly like, okay, alt 1 on that one, alt 3 on that, and alt 4 on that, and that would be the only director's notes I get sometimes. That you just like, here you go.
The multiverse of options.
I was like, blending alts together and like liking different parts of that. Yeah.
And then Diana and Stacy, the clips you showed, I mean, those are just the footage that's coming in is massive. So how do you mount that challenge of organizing that footage and kind of pulling aside the winning bits?
Ordinarily, I use script sync a lot, but there was no script sync for jury duty. So it was more by day, like as if I was just cutting in chronological order, and then I would include everything that I thought was funny or helped to tell the story, and then I kept paring that down, so then I'd have shorter and longer versions. And if it was like a run, like the Cody story, for example, I'd have like a few different pods of Cody topic, and then it was a really collaborative process, so when we would Zoom with the other editors and with the director, I could just play them. I'd say, here are some moments, and like, where could we put this? But yeah, jury duty was cut more like in succession, as if it was happening every day. And the only thing that we had transcribed, and it took a long time to get those transcribed, was the actual court proceedings. So then at a certain point in the process, we were able to look at that, and that was always a challenge to decide like how much of the courtroom do you show. It was a lot of sort of tedious, not everything was funny, but if there was a moment that was funny or the moment had a reaction that was funny, or where they go back to the lunchroom and talk about it later, or at night, then we would grab those pieces and build scenes around them. So that was sort of a different process than I would ordinarily use with like a regular scripted show that had alt takes.
And for Portlandia, where it's like there's not even really a script, there's essentially a premise that starts it off.
Oh yeah, and I guess like I feel like bits and pieces of what everyone said definitely resonate in terms of it's an organizational task. It really is. You just have to like roll up your sleeves and commit to that. And when it's so loose, where it's like, okay, 2 hours of just some people improving, I think the process is just watch it all, and make good selects, sort of rank them. I treat them like chem rolls because, like, on a show like Portlandia, that was like premiere, so we just throw them in to string outs on sequences and just watch them straight through. And then from there, just like have a selects sequence of like the best jokes or the ones that were resonating and laughing. And it was a show where it sort of came from this philosophy from Jonathan Kreisel, who's like one of the show creators, of like, look, the editors, we trust them. We trust their sensibility. The thing they present to directors and showrunners should be what they think the final thing should look like. And so that gave us a lot of confidence, and also just the responsibility of feeling like, well, present something you think is funny and you think works cohesively, so like, would you want to see this on air, basically? Even if it's like a little bit of a longer version, it's just shape the tone, shape everything the way you would want to do it. And then from there, it's like, they can come in, the directors, and then you could like show them different alts and selects and be like, well, there's this joke. or like, you know, there's these strings of jokes, and you could like show them all the different like options, and then from there kind of retool if you want to like pull out different things. And yeah, so I feel like, yeah, organizational task really of just like getting your bearings on what's the messiest stuff, and then find a way to organize it into buckets or selects or something to make it easier for you to be sitting there with someone in the room and like pull the stuff that you know you like.
And are you still working that way on your current shows?
For stuff where it is that loose, where it's not as scripted, you know, or like if it's scripted, then it's like, oh, there's some improvised stuff, then it's like, yeah, very much a game of like, okay, let's just like pull some options together, organize like our brain and thoughts so that I don't have to go back to the footage necessarily and start like fishing for things where I might not remember where it is, you know. And now like Premiere has like transcripts and stuff.
Yeah.
You can auto transcribe, so if you really need to like stitch together like 2 or 3 words, you can really just like search it for it, and it's made it easier. But
Yeah.
I feel like I adapt a similar system in Avid too.
I think sketch comedy is very fun because it kind of can exist in its own small like fishbowl, you know what I mean? It can kind of like be heavy and you can lean into it. When it becomes part of like a feature or something though, you'll often find that that scene that like was so fun and part of the comedy was that it was maybe playing along through all the improv. But then when you put it into a sequence, like in a feature, you realize it kind of can get heavy and it can weigh things down, and it's not serving the film anymore. So I was curious with your feature work, Jen, if you have that experience. And I mean, Come On just felt kind of, I mean, it was like both heavy but lighter than air at the same time. Really beautiful work.
Yeah, I mean, Come On was so much dramatic improvisation. I mean, I think, you know, the script started from a very strong place, and a lot of those emotional beats were carefully crafted by Mike Mills and by Joaquin. They were working early together. But then so much of it was also, I don't think people knew the camera was on sometimes. I think that was happening quite a bit, where, you know, especially you have like Molly Webster, who's a Radiolab host, kind of playing a version of herself, and she and Joaquin would just be, you know, having these really honest conversations, totally unaware that the camera was on because, you know, we shot in black and white, we had a pretty small crew, we were kind of over there, and I think maybe Joaquin knew some of the times. It was unclear to me when people knew and didn't, which I think was a testament to how real it always felt. So again, going back to the stuff about organizing, it was so much of just watching everything, marking anything that made you feel something, whether it was part of the script or not, like a little nugget that came from the side or elsewhere, and being able to find things, not just in the improvisation of it, but like in that almost editing improvisation that we do later when you're completely changing the purpose of a scene, something that was written to be a joke or a funny scene that isn't quite landing. You end up, you know, taking this one line from it and making it part of a montage piece, and it actually is kind of a dark thing. Like, you just don't know when you're watching dailies, especially on a feature, it's gonna morph so many times. Like, everything's rewritten over and over and over. So I just like to make sure I really notate anything or mark anything that feels real. I'm like, this has something in it. This is what I'm going to use as, like, you know, Alan Bell was my mentor for so many years. He always called these like anchor points, and I think he was referring more to like the typical format of the scene. Like, this is the beat that this changes, this changes, this changes. But it's also those moments that make you actually feel something, like the moments where I'm leaning in, watching dailies, or I'm tearing up, or I'm laughing, just finding all of that and being able to dig it up later.
Yeah.
Which, for me, on every project, kind of changes. It's often script sync, but, you know, sometimes it's, you know, topic-based, making select sequences of you know, this section, which is more docu-style. And I was really excited to do this panel to hear everybody's technique.
I know.
I think there's so many different ways to do it, but the most important thing is finding things later.
Script sync is wonderful for improvised dialogue, but much more limited when it's, I'd say, like physical, you know, just, you know, actions that are improvised. And I know that's one thing I always ask my assistants to, like, I want that other pair of eyes. You know, mark anything for me that you thought was funny. Tell me why you thought it was funny. Just the way, like, someone picks up a beer bottle in one take. He never did it like that in the other take, but this is just hilarious. In Hacks, there was an episode where Ava was in slow-mo with the guy George, and they're like, and she was spinning, and she like hit him in the face with her purse, and it just made it. It was like it took you out when we put it in the cut, but like it was so funny, and it's always that nice moment in cutting dailies where you and your assistant can just share a laugh too, even if it doesn't make it in the final. I also find it's really helpful to become extremely good friends with the script supervisor and beg for as much information as you can get. Is that something any of you guys do?
Yeah, like totally. I always talk to the script supervisor and make sure I make a relationship with them in the beginning. Be like, hey, this is me, and being able to just be my ears on set, and just anything you heard or marked or all that kind of stuff really helps, because I think that one time we're not always recording. And the things we don't hear when they say cut, I always ask them to like write down like what their intent or all that kind of stuff for script supervisor as well.
Yeah, they're like worth their weight in gold, you know. When you get someone who's very detailed.
Yeah, especially when like they let you know what specifically which improv or thing that the director really responded to, because sometimes it's like. There's so much, and so it's so helpful to know that one thing. I have actually invited script supervisors into the cutting room when I can, because I was surprised to find out how few of them even know that we use this software called ScriptSync, and that our assistant editors are essentially recreating their work. And so I think it shows them how important their very clear markings, especially since what we're getting now is just, a 3-hour-long take that has to then get broken up. So how important their notes are for us to be able to try to follow and weave our way through all the digital dailies.
And like the more improvised things are, like the more important it is to just like have the notes, like what was the director responding to, or like what did people find funny? Or like what was important, why did they change the setup, or like what were they trying to do here? All of those things are so important to get a sense of, so you're not flying blind with the footage.
And sometimes I've even asked like the sound production recordists to like, can you just leave the mic up so I can actually hear what the directors, because if it's like seat of their pants and I'm not getting the script supervisor's notes that maybe they're not able to get them, I'm just like, please just keep recording when the director talks to the actor, because then I'm going to know what was the suggestion, what was the prompt that they gave them, so that I know that that's important to them or not.
I feel like I depend on that so much on Reservation Dogs, and even on What We Do in the Shadows. I feel like it was listening for the resets. It's like, what was the note in the reset, and did we achieve it or not? And just to gauge like what was the director or the showrunner or the writer, whoever's on set, like throwing out suggestions. What are they reacting well to, and then like honing that. I feel like for the shows that I've done, I make friends with the script supervisor but I feel like I only use their notes to find things or solve problems when a director asks for it. Somehow I've never found a groove in how to use it to make my work easier or better or more confident or whatever superlative that you want to put in there. But it's always been like, oh, we had that one shot, where is it? And then I was like, oh my God, thank you, script supervisor, you helped me find it. Maybe I should figure out how you guys use your script notes much better, maybe.
Also, sometimes improv, isn't welcomed too, when they're like, we didn't really want the actor to go off on that, and they usually, that's another good thing to know. It's like where they didn't want the scene to lag. And it's true, like sometimes improv can, like it's a button on a button, so like you knowing not to use the improv is also another thing to know, and another gut thing.
Yeah. How do you guys approach your editor's cuts? This is an interesting thing that we were discussing before, which is that there's...
What's the question?
Oh, your editor's cut. Like, there's sort of two philosophies in a way, which is one that can be, do you just present your perfect version, or do you present the sort of more open version where they can see everything that they can have? Do you have a preference for which way?
Yeah, I feel like I do a medium length menu, like not the 20-page diner menu, but like this is what you can have. And I try to make it as, in TV especially, I try to make it as close to the script as possible. Not close to the script, but in terms of like, I'm not cutting out any lines, I'm not I'm leaving in as long improvs as possible, because what I feel I'm trying to service there is the directors coming in after like 4 or 5 days of 5 days of shooting, and immediately they only have 2 days to work on a cut, and in that kind of vulnerable state of like, did I get everything? I kind of want to service that with the editor's cut more, to be like, you got everything. Don't worry. Like your expectation versus reality game that you're playing here. Like, I will help you as much as possible. Once you finish watching it, then I'll like rapid fire pitch. Like, okay, I think we can cut this scene down this much more. I have a cut to show you. I have that, this, and then say, okay, I give you what you shot, and then I have all these ideas. And I feel like in the 2 days of director's cuts that we get on half hours, I feel like the first half day is just that, like get through showing what they shot, medium-sized menu, and then pitch cuts and restructures and things. Yeah.
Stacey, you've worked with a lot of the same showrunners a couple of times, so you probably have a decent amount of trust with them. And
yeah, it really depends on the show and the context. It's like the relationship, editor and showrunner, whoever you're working with, it's always different. And I find communication up top before things start coming down the pipeline is very important to me. Having done it a few times now, it's just like, some people, they really, need to see like every version of everything, or like they're more comfortable with it being loose and rough, and or it's like a brand new person to the process. So you want to, help them not be scared, Yeah. So sometimes it helps to like get it honed in, or get 1 or 2 scenes like really in there, so that you can build some confidence in the process for them, and in their confidence in you too. I guess I was thinking about, I think with like sketch comedy specifically, it's better in my experience to just get it the way you think will sell the jokes right away. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to articulate why something's funny.
But people on the internet can tell you why
exactly.
it's funny.
Yeah, right. And it's like, at least in terms of like the feedback process, it's like, at least with like Tim Robinson and Portlandia, is something I learned from it, is just sell the whole sketch the way you want it to be. And if they're on board, then, then we're gonna have a good time, like figuring out how to like cut it down and stuff. Yeah. Whereas like with like more long form or scripted stuff, it's like really a conversation of like, well, what are you looking for in this first cut? Do we want to have this conversation about having this be open-ended, where you come in and we build this thing together? Or is it like your expectations are, you want to see what you envisioned straight off the bat? So, it really depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jen, you and I talked, I think we have a little bit more of a similar style in that I think we both feel comfortable with it's more open-ended. I'm going to show you, it's going to be rough, I'm going to warn you, you know what I mean? But just like, I want you to see everything that was scripted, and I want you to see like the extended cut of this moment, and then know that we'll shape it down. But I just want you to see the options of where it can go.
Yeah, definitely. I like to present everything. I like to build everything, because I think that's one of the most important things. It kind of goes back to that thing about being able to find stuff later. Mm-hmm. Like, you want your best version at that moment, according to the script. When you know some of these jokes aren't working, or this part of the scene is stretching, and sometimes I'll make the edits in my mind, be like, oh, I can't wait to cut that out and that out. And sometimes if I have enough time, if I'm not slammed in dailies, I'll do those alts, and I'll build them, but they won't be what I present first. I almost always present the scripted version first, with all of what I see maybe as flaws or strengths or weaknesses, whatever it is in that moment. Because I think that's part of the journey, and I think it's really important that you go on that journey together. I think if you go ahead, you're just going to have to go back and show them why it doesn't work. And also, sometimes I'm wrong, like I'll think something's not really working, and especially early on in dailies, and then the whole movie's coming together, and you go, oh, wait a minute, no, that actually totally works, or it's setting up this other thing that I didn't really see the subtext on, and whatnot. I think we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, and I think it's most valuable for me to have everything out there, so I can always go back and refer to it.
Yeah.
I guess I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you do more features, do you find that, are you sending like editor's cuts as like one whole thing that's like loose, or is it like, oh, here's a few scenes as you're shooting? Like, what's the first thing they see?
Ideally, as we're shooting, like every week, every Friday or Monday or whatever it may be, the end of that week, sending a handful of scenes. To me, that takes so much of the pressure off. I think my very first feature, I didn't really share anything until the end, and like, that is terrifying as a director.
Yeah.
To not have seen anything. There's no way you could do a perfect version. There's no way it's gonna be received well, because all they're seeing is the difference between what they felt they were getting on the day and this version of everything put together. So I love sharing scenes, like, I'll send you these 10 scenes, and as we start filling it in more, I'll string them together, and then we'll have conversations as, as we're building it and saying this is working, and ideally I'll go back and implement some of the notes so that by the time we're at, the beginning of the director's cut, I've had a chance to do it. I don't always, depending on how much is being shot and how much time I've had in dailies, but at least we'll have had those conversations. Because, what you shoot on day 25, informs what you had on day 2.
Yeah. I think we also talked about there's a very circular experience sometimes where you have to then hold the hand of the director or producer on the same journey that you went on, which is that, you get the dailies, you're like, okay, oh gosh, they went on that run, and then they went on that run, and you have to, you cut all the different runs, and you bank them, keep them in an alt bin, and then they come in and they're like, can I see that version? And which one works the best, and they want to see their little mutant versions, or they want to see, the alts, and then I think it happens quite often because we've already gone on the journey, but we just escort them to the same destination, which is the one that you had in your editor's cut, because because you've gone through that path. But it's okay, that's actually really satisfying, I think, when that can happen. I did want to ask also, I think Stacey, you had brought up a terrific thing of just, was it in? I think that the Tim Robinson, I Think You Can Leave, you said that you had to spend a lot of time figuring out, what is this show? What's the format going to be? And that, just finding the eject button was one of the most important parts of creating the structure. And I loved that phrase.
Yeah. It was a first season show, and they wrote a lot of sketches, and then there was no, structure to the show. But when we put them all together, we had all.
Did I read that the structure is just that each sketch was supposed to be an annoying person who makes people want to leave the room? That was the general premise of each sketch.
It was I think it came from this thing of Tim and his writing partner Zach Cannon. They had a bunch of sketches that just didn't make the cut in SNL, where they're we think these are funny. They just probably don't fit the SNL vibe. So they just had a bunch of those lying around it, and I think sort of revamped them into this thing. But then a lot of them were 9-page sketches, where it's yeah, on SNL that makes sense. They need to fill an hour. You can't do that for a Netflix streaming thing. And then when you watch them back to back, it took them a long time in the process to get comfortable with the idea that we were going to cut out most of it. So the approach was we'll cut these individual sketches as if they're just individual sketches you're watching. And then way later, we strung them together into episodes. And then I was wow, we can't stand any of these. Just really tries your patience, and so that's where it was okay, let's introduce the idea of cutting these down to 2 or 3 minute things that can really sustain as long as they want to be, and then just get out of it. So it was a lot of figuring out where do we end the sketch, how do we end the sketch. So that's the eject button of where is the patience tested, or the height of the funny, I guess.
And do you remember what you said to me what you determined were the 2 most successful eject buttons?
I don't.
A loud noise.
Oh, yeah.
And a funny face, or a funny face.
Funny face or a loud noise, really, at least for that show. It's just just come out on a loud noise or something weird. It doesn't matter. We're not here doing a long form story of any kind. Just it's meant to be funny. Sketches, Like, if they're funny, that's all you need. So, like, that was always comforting to me as an editor, like, of sketches specifically, is like, just make it funny. No, we're not trying to make perfect little stories here.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times improv and improvisation kind of just starts to meander. Like they hit a great thing and they go on a streak with it, and then it starts to kind of lose its focus.
Right.
And then you're like, what's the ending? And so that's why like finding the eject button is such an important part, because the actors often never had it, and you got to make it for them. You know.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to be running out of time soon, so I just would love to hear. There's two questions I wanted to ask. One was that I know like a couple of us up here kind of have been through the Greg Daniels world of comedy. I did Space Force. You were Rutherford Falls, which was with Mike Schur, and I think Diana, you're working on Running Point right now with Mindy Kaling. All people who came from this one standard, and I know from that I got like. Dave Rogers and Rob Perlstein, who helped me so much on Space Force, like just showed me the way that they do their script their script sync, color coding, every single alt, and then putting like buttons in, like a series of buttons at the end of a scene in a cut, and then the importance of having every single option ready at a moment's notice to, what do we say? A, B?
Option A, option B.
Yeah, option A, option B, and they just want to see them back to back. So having those things prepared. Anything else like with Mindy that she has a way of working that?
I had never heard the phrase a blow, which I guess is like a funny thing to go out of the scene on. And so they'll do alts of those, and I guess, it's sort of what you're saying. Or sometimes I'll try and go by the script, and then they never did it as in the script. And then when you're in the bay, it's like, well, can I see the scripted version? And if they didn't do it as the script, then we have to sometimes build it through ADR or through stealing little pieces from other places. And so then sometimes she'll add a blow, which I didn't know what that was, but now I do.
Sorry,
through ADR.
Just so that we can wrap up, I wanted to ask too. Take your choice. Take your pick. This is the last session of the day, and those of you that have been to Editfest before know that it usually ended with the lean forward moment that was always hosted and moderated by the wonderful Norm Holland. And so, in that spirit, I wanted to ask if you guys feel like sharing another show that you would have loved to have worked on, or just that it really, or a film that really inspired you and you come back to that makes you want to pay attention and understand how they did it. And if you don't have that in mind, just one of your own diamond moments where you felt like you made that piece of improv work and you're just so proud of having done that. So inspiration or pride, take your pick. Dealer's choice. Starting with Jen. Eddie winner.
I feel like
doesn't have to be
recently-
improv.
Yeah, I feel like most recently, Anatomy of a Fall just blew me away. I remember watching that and being like, I wish I could have, well, no, I don't wish I had any hand on it because that movie's exquisite as it is. But I was like, I wish I could have just been a fly on the wall of this whole process because, to me, that film is basically perfection. I loved it. But that was more recent. I think in terms of inspiration, that kind of led me to want to pursue editing. When I was in high school, I came upon Bonnie and Clyde. I'm sure everyone's heard of it. And it just blew my mind, and I think I just watched it over and over. It just had, everything about it appealed to me, and just this new language, or new to me, that was being used at the time. And obviously, Dee Allen is just amazing. And so that was something that very quickly drew me to the art, and just loved it.
Yeah, I'll do two, too. I guess Strangers with Candy was a TV show that I just loved growing up and really turned me on to the weirder paths of comedy. And I do think that's one show I can go back and watch any scene and feel like, wow, they just filled this with the most insane lines you've ever heard, back to back to back. And I always found that so inspiring. And the other side of me is feeling I'd love to do more features and movies, and I just grew this love of cinema, especially as I got into college and stuff. So a North Star for me is this film called Yi Yi, which is by Edward Yang.
Oh, yeah.
And it's totally different thing, but I do feel it's 3.5 hour, 4 hour epic, but it's just like the culmination of it all just like speaks to me and like just like is so impressive in terms of like feeling out like the macro level of that film is just so impressive of like how it's paced and how things just kind of like move in this way that's like so captivating, and it, you know, definitely something that inspires me.
My absolute favorite movie, which people are always like kind of making fun of me for, is Fried Green Tomatoes. Because it, I love to cry and laugh in the same watching experience, and it like goes into some really like deep and complicated issues. And I remember seeing it when I was pretty young, but it really had an effect on me. And so I have always wanted to sort of edit comedy that has heart, because I think you need both. And comedy is a way into some really difficult topics, I think, and making it easier to talk about. So, yeah.
There was, I think the first real like short film that I edited was in 2006, and early 2007 was when Hot Fuzz came out, and I just like watching that, being like, oh, I'm trying to put some footage together, and we were doing like dark comedy, the government is coming to get you, but we're laughing about it kind of things. But then I watched Hot Fuzz, and I was like, man, you can make things funny in so many more ways than just being a cynical asshole, you know? And just seeing the craft, especially that's such a big, like, even directing comedy and using the frame, and, you know, I think every frame of painting, that YouTube channel, wonderful YouTube channel that doesn't exist anymore, like had a whole thing on how he directs for comedy and how do you use that for comedy. And so much of the energy in that was created in the editing, and how, you know, style was created in the editing. I really love that. There was a movie, there's an indie film that I watched recently called Shiva Baby. And I thought the editing on that was spectacular. I wish I could have watched
Sugar Baby?
Shiva Baby.
Shiva Baby.
Shiva Baby. And
Sugar Baby. I was like...
And that's something that I wish I had cut. It was so, it was such an amazing, it was all within this one kind of, you know, somebody's died and it's this family around it, and everything goes bad, and it's just close quarters, and it felt like it was all improv, and it was wonderful, yeah. Hannah Park cut that, I think.
For me, one movie that really moved me and like really what I loved about the editing in it was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. When I saw that movie, I was just like, wow, like it just really represents how you can tell a story non-linearly, you know, like you can, and you know, really depicted like memories of like what that is. Cause, you know, I think I was always fascinated with films where like explored like topics and themes about how, you know, we all experience different things in our lives, and how we remember something, it can be completely different from how you remembered. Like that's why I like Back to the Future too, because you go back and like you can see all that kind of stuff. And that movie was just so well put together, and such another comedy with heart. And I love Jim Carrey, Canadian. And I just really thank you for the clapping for Canadians. And it just really. I just really loved actually watching behind the scenes of that movie as well, because, you know, Michel Gondry did everything mostly practical. And so it was just something that I was like, oh, I wish I could have like my hands on that footage and playing with like how we like got into and out of scenes and transition. It was just like this one long, beautiful music video of love and how love affects us, and how we wish that, you know, sometimes, you know, to be loved or not to be loved at all, or like not thinking about the person you love and you wish you didn't have their memories and everything. So it just was such a beautiful movie, and really was like what I really noticed about the editing in that. And it was like where the editor shined, I think, in that film.
There's some really great like YouTube things talking about the process of that and what was cut out, and that and I think Moulin Rouge is another movie that I think is just like stunning if you can go back and look and see what was cut out of that film and just left that beautiful diamond that's there. That was such a great way to end. I'll just say my movies that I love are Airplane. I can't believe how many of lines from that movie are just deep in my subconscious, and same goes for The Princess Bride and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Those are just, I mean, like, just those 3 movies, I think you can learn to cut comedy, and do it all. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
This answered some questions. What a great Editfest.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, yes, and thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Ace. Thank you, Kevin Tent. Thank you for the staff that adapted to us having a new panelist here today. And thank you all for coming and asking questions and taking notes. And do not forget to decorate and put on Instagram your own little sticker booklet. Okay, have fun with that, or put it on your school locker.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody.